clearly here, to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Through the renewing of your mind. And what goes on in your mind? Thoughts. So how do we transform our lives then? How do we begin to manifest the very things that God desires for us? So we renew our mind then by renewing our thoughts. Now, more of that in just a second. But here is basically the process of manifestation. If you want to manifest anything in your life scripturally, all you got to do is follow these steps. Thoughts lead to attitudes and convictions. Attitudes and convictions lead to emotions. Emotions lead to actions, and actions lead to habits and behavior. Stop right there. If you wanted to change any behavior in your life that you didn't like, you're too mean, you're too rude, or you got habits that you cannot break, we can stop right there and say, you know what? If you want to change your habits, we can go all the way back to thoughts and recognize that portion, but let's continue. Habits and behavior lead to character, and ultimately character lead to your destiny. So how do we change our destiny? How do we change our life? How do we manifest things in our life? It all starts where? Thoughts. Just so I can overemphasize it. Thoughts. It's amazing. Just your thoughts. So if you're looking to change your life in any capacity, if you want better relationships in your life, better health, better relationship with God, better emotions, greater success, where does it all have to start? In your mind. In your mind. That's what the scripture is saying. See, thoughts create outcomes. Turn to the person beside you and tell them that. Thoughts create outcomes. Here's a simple, perfect example. Ready? Remember the woman with the issue of blood? Remember the woman who was hemorrhaging for 12 years? She went to all the doctors, all the acupuncturists, ate some weird, whatever. And then she finally came to Jesus, and we'll pick up the story from there where she's talking to Jesus. Mark 5:25-29 says this, "Now a certain woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years and also suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had and was no better, but she grew worse." Verse 27, when she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched the garment. Key verse, verse 28. For she thought, if only I touch his clothes, I will be made well. And immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. For she thought, if I just touch the hem of his garments, I will be made well. What changed her life? What got her healed? Verse 28, for she thought. And the manifestation of her thought became a reality. Think about that. What if she thought something else? What if she thought something else? You ever think about that? What if she thought, oh man, I'm going to die? I don't know her name. The scripture doesn't tell us her name. So, right? So she'll be known as the woman with the issue of blood. What if she thought in her mind, I'm going to die? What would happen to her? She would have died. What if rather than saying, if I just touch the hem of his garments, I will be made well, what if she thought, if I just come within 2 meters of Jesus Christ, I will be healed? What would have happened? When she came within 2 meters of Jesus Christ, she would have been healed. Do you see? There was an example of this guy who was diagnosed with lung cancer. And this is a true story. He was diagnosed with lung cancer, which is traditionally fatal. If you have lung cancer, you will most likely die. Now, he died shortly thereafter, and they did an autopsy on his body just to see what form of cancer it was and how it killed him. Well, when they opened up his body and they looked at his lungs, there was no cancer there. All he had was a little minor liver problem that was causing some symptoms. Very easily treatable, very easily healed. So what was the conclusion? The doctors concluded that the thoughts of having cancer were actually more lethal than the disease itself, and it took his life. The thought. He didn't have cancer, but he died. How? The thought of having cancer actually took his life. Think about that. The woman with the issue of blood thought she was going to be healed, and she was. The man with cancer thought he was going to die, and he did. Neither was right, neither was wrong. Not one was more moral than the other. Not one read more books. Not one had a closer relationship to God. Not one was a churchgoer and one wasn't. There was one defining difference between the two. Well, the same difference, but the focus of it. There was no outside factor changing the scenario. It was simply their thoughts. They were both manifesting their reality with the thoughts and their belief. Or in other words, they were manifesting their reality with their faith. What they believed for, they got. whether positive or negative. In fact, it was Henry Ford who said this: whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. Does that make sense to you? If you think you can, and that person thinks they can't, they'll both manifest what it is that they're thinking. They're both right, you see? And as she thought, she was. So our thoughts create our outcomes. Let's give it another example. Matthew chapter 8, verses 5. This is when the centurion came to him. When Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him pleading with him, "Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed, dreadfully tormented." And Jesus said, "Well, I'll come and heal him then." And the centurion answered and said, "Lord, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof. Only speak the word and my servant will be healed." Then Jesus heard that. He marveled and he said to those who followed, "Assuredly, I say to you that I have not found such great faith even in Israel." Then when Jesus said to the centurion, "Go your way, as you have believed, so let it be done unto you," and his servant was healed that very hour. Amazing scenario. A centurion, not even Israelite, came to this Jewish Messiah who was there. It's like, "Yo, my boy's got dying. I need you to just heal him." And Jesus is like, "Sure, I'll come and heal him." He's like, "No, you don't even have to come. Just say the word and it's going to happen." And Jesus is like, "Whoa, this guy's for real. Whatever you think, you will have." And he thought he would be healed, and he was healed that very hour. Do you see? It's amazing. The moment he thought it and believed it, he got it. In fact, how many times were people healed in the scripture because of their beliefs, because of their faith? And the answer to that question is every single time. Mark 5:34, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." Let's continue. Mark 10:52, "Go your way, your faith has made you well." And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus on the road. Luke 17:19, and he said, "Arise and go your way, your faith," or your thoughts and belief, "has made you well." See, these people's outcomes were determined by their thoughts or their belief system. So the question I ask for you today then is, what are you thinking about most of the time? Or what is your belief system? In fact, you don't even have to try and answer that. You don't have to guess and try and figure out what it is that I'm believing for. Why? Because the answer to that question is simply looking around your life and seeing what you're manifesting. What's going on in your life right now is a direct result of your thoughts or your belief system, because we're creating our realities every single day by the thoughts that we hold in our mind. What are we thinking about? Are we thinking godly thoughts or not? Remember, as a man thinketh, so is he. Or as you think, you are, or at least are becoming. It's an amazing, amazing, powerful, powerful principle. So let's start to expand the possibilities. What are you limiting God to do? Renew your mind and start thinking like Christ. That's what 1 Corinthians says. "For who hath known the mind of the Lord, and that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of" who? Christ. So let's stop thinking like we think in human limitations and human thoughts and humans' minds. We have to start thinking like Jesus. How did he think when he entered into a situation? How did he think when he got in front of a sick person? How did he think when he was faced with 5,000 people who were hungry and they had no food? How did he think? See, many people are limiting themselves by their thoughts. You'll catch yourself saying, "I can't do it." "You're right, you can't," because you're thinking like that. "Oh, you know what? I'm not good enough. It's never going to happen. I'll never make it. It doesn't work this way. Every time I try, I fail." Good thoughts to be holding on to your mind, right? Whatever you think about, you manifest. And you wonder, why then? Am I continually getting the very thing that I don't want to get, right? British track athlete Roger Bannister, you may have heard this story, 1952. He finished 4th in the Olympics, just out of getting a medal.